আমি আমাদের রুবানা সাদিয়া আলম আর্কিটেক্ট তাকে একটু রিকোয়েস্ট করব পুরো প্রোগ্রামটা কন্ডাক্ট করার জন্য। হ্যাঁ, প্লিজ রুবানা, ইউ স্টার্ট ইওর present what it call.
Thank you, Appa. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum shabaike. I'm architect Rubana Sadi Alom, member of WAEPA EC committee also, and working as HOD, head of the department of Mannan University of Architecture at Architecture Department. Today, I'm welcoming you all to the 6th event of the 5th Executive Committee of WAEPA Bangladesh under the platform WAEPA Talks. WAEPA means Women Architects, Engineers and Planners Association in Bangladesh, is the voice of women technical professionals in Bangladesh. It was founded on July 28, 2005. The vision of WAEPA is to succeed as the apex body and voice of women technical professionals of Bangladesh, and mission to promote and empower the professional arena of women architects, engineers and planners, as well as to ensure emancipation of career women in nation building and networking with national and international programs and projects. Today, the title of our webinar is Architectural Responses Towards Spatial and Environmental Equity. We are glad that architect Tumpa Husne, Yasmin Fellow, Senior Lecturer in Architecture, University of Westminster, has consented to be the speaker of the session. The talk will mainly focus on an architect's role towards ensuring equity and community and their responsibility towards environment. We would love your presence in the online event and participation. Thank you. Architect, now I'd like to introduce our chair of the person today, architect Husna Rahman. She's a former registrar and presently she is advisor in Shantamaram University of Creative Technology. She will be chairing our today's program, and I would like to now give some brief about architect Tumpa Husna Yasmin Fellows. She is a BSc Honors postgraduate MArch and fellow in FHERE BAR. Her affiliation is our Building Design Mannan Foundation Trust, University of Westminster, a FAME Collective, Asian Architects Association. And Tumpa Hussain Yasmin Fellows is an award-winning architect based in the UK, co-founded the interdisciplinary practice, our Building Design, the Charity Mannan Foundation Trust, and the two organizations that promote diversity in the built environment and support architects from the ethnic minority in the UK. FAME Collective and Asian Architects Association. She is a senior lecturer in architecture at the University of Westminster, where her teaching draws on her research methodologies on interdisciplinary approach to design. Her practice-based research focuses on community participatory methods on architectural responses to the changing climate, landscape, and social practices in the UK and Bangladesh. She was awarded the RIBA J Rising Star Award in 2017 for the RIBA President Awards for Research in 2019. For her architectural work, she has received the SEED or Practice Pacific Rim Community Design Network Award in 2018 and Architecture Sense Frontiers Award 2017. Tumpa has been appointed to be on the design review panel in June 2019 for the Southwark Council Planning Department, which is an advisory role. Now I request our chair, architect Husna Rahman, to say something about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rubana. Good evening, everyone. I welcome our speaker today, architect Tumpa Husna Yasmin, who has kindly consented to be the speaker of the session. We are very patiently waiting for her to say something. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Hosna. First of all, I would like to thank Selina Afroza because without her, I wouldn't be here. And I'm so privileged and honored to be among such great women. I'm quite feeling empowered actually listening to you tell me about what your work is about and what you're involved in. And I've been wanting to get involved in connecting with women in the profession in Bangladesh. So this is a great honor for me. So thank you so much for inviting me, Selina Apu. I really appreciate it. Okay, so I think I'm just going to start because I have quite a long presentation, which I will skim through some of the slides.
You can share your screen.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, you can see my screen. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So yeah, as mentioned, as introduced, the title of my talk today is Architectural Responses Towards Spatial and Environmental Equity. So I just wanted to give a brief background about my architectural background and who I am as well. So I think it's really important to mention that I was actually born in Dhaka. I was born in Bangladesh, and my family moved to London when I was in primary school. So I studied in London, and I studied architecture at the School of Architecture at the Bartlett, UCL, where I did my undergrad, postgrad, and my chartership as well. So after I graduated, I entered the profession, the industry in London, which is, is known for its award-winning architects. And this was before I co-founded our building design practice in 2018. So I worked for 10 years in the industry before I co-founded my practice. But during my work in these practices, I co-founded Mannan Foundation Trust, which Zainab Apu briefly mentioned. So much of my presentation is going to be about the work in Mannan Foundation Trust, which is in Bangladesh. So yeah, prior to co-founding our building design, I've worked in some of the award-winning practices in London for 10 years. My professional experience included working in multidisciplinary teams on large infrastructure and commercial projects, whereas involved in doing, design to delivering buildings on site. So two main things that struck me while I was in the industry, and I was very aware of, one was that the projects that we worked on and the people that I was working with were not inclusive. So it was very male-dominated teams, and we worked on multi-million pounds worth of projects. And I felt like the architecture that I was working on isn't for everybody on the streets. It was for those privileged ones. And it didn't reflect the communities that live in London. So it wasn't serving everybody. I wanted to change that. So I co-founded the charity Mannan Foundation Trust. I wanted to address that feeling that I'm practicing architecture not for everybody. So Mannan Foundation Trust is the charity that I co-founded with my two sisters who are doctors and my mother, who's a retired academic. And we founded, the original aim for finding this charity was to serve the disadvantaged communities in a village in Chandpur called Rajapur in Bangladesh, where my late father was from. So my extended family lived there, and also later on our building design followed that practice of community participatory and empowering and enabling the voices of unrepresented or underrepresented communities. So the main aims were to address inequality and to consider social values of places, buildings, and neighborhoods. The other thing I did was to address the lack of diversity in the industry. So the fact that it's very male dominated. So the women that I worked with, we felt that we were not supported in many ways to progress through the ranks in the industry. So I founded this the collective called FAME Collective, which stands for Female Architects of Minority Ethnic, and it's a research network, and it's a way of being an activist through research. So we want to find the facts, we want to find lived experience, and we want to use those information, the research, to challenge the situation at the moment. So yeah, so this Fame Collective platform celebrates the successes of the women in the built environment and exposes the barriers they face. And recently I've applied for RIBA award for funding for this research, and we've been successful. So that's quite encouraging to see that the RIBA is supporting it. Yeah, so some of the things that we found through our research, I'm not going to read all of this out, but it's quite, you know, quite scary really, because some people were saying things like, you know, it was very hidden, the barriers, and it wasn't very easy to point finger at anyone because it's done so subtly. So how do you address something that's done so subtly, and how do you address discrimination when it's not overtly discriminative? So these are some of the questions we're trying to address. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that some of the work that I'll be presenting today are from these institutions. So our Building Design, Mannan Foundation Trust, University of Westminster, and Fame. So the history of Mannan Foundation Trust. So we started in 2011, and it created a platform for knowledge-based practitioners. So practitioners from all different specialism would come together and would have the same aim to help the disadvantaged community. So we have healthcare, we have education, and we have income generating skill classes and so on. So my journey to Mannan Foundation Trust was that back in 2011, when I went back to Rajapur. I hadn't been for many years before that, because we used to go when we were children, and then for many years when my father passed away, we kind of lost touch with our extended family in Rajapur village. So that visit was a significant visit, and from that visit I started practicing this way. So I, as well as teaching at the University of Westminster to address some of the issues of inequality in the society and in the industry, I'm basically through my practices, I'm trying to carve a role for an architect who is interested in environmental calamities and how working with communities you can address those issues. So my research and my practice uses the methodology that draws on activist anthropological approaches, decolonizing ethnography that prioritizes community members as producers of research, investigating the effects of changing monsoon weather, and also the research uses approaches identifying, exploring through community participatory methods. The architectural responses to spatial, social, and climate injustice, predominantly in Bangladesh, and then I'll talk about my work in the UK. So as I reflect on my work for this talk today, I think I would say more than being an architect, I'm a facilitator or a designer who had worked with the communities in the Rajapur village, and in the practice through the ethnography practices in the fields, I see myself as an interested outsider. So as well as being related to the community members, I'm also an outsider because I was brought up in London, but my heart is still there in the village because that's where I have an emotional attachment with the people that live there. So with my own architectural practice, I'm interested in understanding with a post-colonial lens, what is architecture through participation, what is ethnography, and how is it represented? I locate my practice deep within and as a direct descendant of a European colonialism and racialized hierarchy that justified extraction of wealth and resources from the south to the north. And in this case, colonialists causing mass, for example, in the Rajapur building, Rajapur village, mass poisoning of the community by giving access to arsenic contaminated groundwater that is used for drinking water, which I'll come on to a bit later on. So some of the methods that we've used in working with the community, one of which are improvised mapping drawings, making design methods, drawings and making as a design method, and exploring and using both as an effective part of the participatory design, as well as the means for disseminating, sharing the knowledge that's within the local people that live in the area. So yeah, so these are some of our mapping drawings that we've developed through the participatory ethnographic practice. So these narratives, this storytelling that we use through talking to the communities and workshops were essentially for the design and construction of Rajapur Women's Literacy and Healthcare Centre building, which I'm going to come on to. And these workshops helped us understand how the community live and adapt with monsoonal changes in the climate and understand the shifting seasonal labour pattern and availability of labour. So one thing we found very challenging is the fact that architectural drawings isn't something that necessarily, I would say, is a successful method of using a participatory workshop. Because people just immediately distance themselves, they don't want to engage because they don't understand, they don't know how to read it. So we wanted to find other ways, and one really good way was to work with the children in the village through participatory drawings. So we had adults and children in the same workshops where we learned through their drawings. So the village children drew their ideas and the community building that they wanted. And these were sometimes translated, they translated the parents' ideas. And the other methods that we used through this project was performing relationships with the site. So this involved walking around the site with rope to understand the spatial arrangement and what is preferred in the social etiquette of a public building that's for the community. We've also wanted to know about the local materials, and we did that through workshops. So bamboo grows in abundance in the Rajapur village, and it's a material that has a stigma. People don't want to use bamboo for something permanent. They see bamboo as something very temporary. So we wanted to learn what the stigma was about, and we found that it's because of the practical reason that it rots very quickly. So we've used local knowledge of how to treat the bamboo, and we've used workshops to disseminate that information so that others can also learn, and they can use then it encourages the use of bamboo once they have confidence that the treatment will work. So workshops are used as methods of participation, aimed to specifically investigate the process of drawing out local skills that facilitates an inclusive team, giving voice to all, which empowers the community. For example, the social structure in the village did not allow women to have to voice their opinion in public meetings. It's always the elders who expressed what is needed for the community. So by participating in making workshops, the women could have a voice and become part of the making of the design decisions, and help in the appropriate construction materials and methods. The original concept was designed and redesigned until we found what would be right, what would be in response to the local needs, and in order to provide the best space that could be built. So this is a really interesting relationship, and I think it's because I'm a woman myself. I found it easier to to directly have build relationships with the women in the village, and I found that they build their own kitchens. Women build their own kitchens. They build their own hut for the cow that's stored in the courtyard, and they knew how to build with earth. And that's something that we want to combine in the construction, because then that enables participation, and that immediately empowers these women to have, you know, have a big say in how the building is built. And then the drawings were produced like this for disseminating how one can build with earth. So we scrapped our original architectural drawings, and then, you know, some of these drawings were developed on our feet on site as we spoke with those who were on site building it. So after the building was built, these are the drawings that were produced for forums such as this. So most of it were designed as we went along, without proper architectural drawings, because we followed the guidance of local experts, and sometimes we changed our minds based on what would be right to respond to the environment, the local environment. So yeah, so the building, the site of the building is a ditch, which we wanted to retain, because the ditch actually attracted very rich ecological species. So basically it had this monsoonal cycle, it followed the monsoonal cycle and attracted the kingfisher, attracted the fish during the flooding season. So we decided to raise the building on a concrete plinth, and that's the only use of concrete in the building. And the rest are built with round earth with a local bamboo frame, structural frame with a roof canopy. Yeah, so the building has perforated elevations at various, so that each elevation is different based on the way the cyclone is moving across the site, or the way the wind is blowing. So that information was acquired from the local people, because I wouldn't understand you know, how the environment works, because I don't live there. So it was so important for us to really get that valuable information through the community participation. Yeah, so this is the building being used by the community, and it's now in the ownership of community members, and we have women's literacy classes and healthcare workshops. So yeah, so this is a very much loved building especially by the women, where they feel that there is a safe space for them in a building that they can go to, because the men have these tea stalls at every corner, and women didn't have a public space, if you like, to, yeah, not just to learn, but also to just share their stories. Yeah, so these are some of our successes in the building. So some of the women have started their own businesses in tailoring after getting the skills from the classes that we provide. And yeah, WAEPA kindly took her students from her architecture school and visited. So yeah, we have had some visitors from outside of the village. So the aim of the Radical building was to establish a facility for health and literacy in using participatory co-design methods, local materials and skills, using design and construction as an educational device in itself. The aim was also to study and to enable local design responses to the environmental challenges at the forefront of the unpredictable, fast-changing climate in the village, and to share that and discuss its findings with both the local and international communities. The building is also to teach and to learn skill sharing, how we can skill share in the design process and also in the construction process, through drawings, through construction methods, through workshops of making, and expanding on the traditional architectural design practices that we tend to practice in an office. So sharing such practices in the context of this changing state of the environment and the architecture. So yeah, so this is a illustration, if you like, which tells a story very quickly in 1 minute of the building stages, and how we were able to retain the ditch, which encouraged fish and other birds, and which was very important to us. So what are the adaptation strategies used in rural Bangladesh? So we looked elsewhere. So we looked at the Char communities. I'm sure some of you are familiarized with this, and how they have converted the Char islands to permanent land by growing vegetation. So the Char islands, which appear every 5 years, had been more permanent because of the type of vegetation that's been grown, and it's only the local indigenous communities that live there that understand how the earth, the soil behaves. And also we've learned from these communities how to grow food in extreme flooding and in extreme climate conditions. So these are floating ideas of floating gardens for vegetable growings, and we were then able to disseminate that information to Rajapur village, and ideas of how to protect your fish during a flooding season. So what happened after the post occupancy evaluation, we wanted to understand a bit more about what is needed in the community. So this project tests the approach to the production of local knowledge and ways it can be documented and exchanged and shared with the community participants, and to understand the entanglement of the social practices and the groundwater. So I'm going to talk about the groundwater a bit more, because that's one of the things that we discovered after we built the building, that it's one of the things that people are worried about, drinking such a high level of arsenic contaminated groundwater. So the production of these research with the aim of social benefit, and also the aim was to decolonize ethnographic practice in the field that prioritizes the community members as the producers of research, and the use of participants' drawings and mapping as methods of production of local knowledge. So the idea is that through the practice of architecture, through the practice of architectural research, the communities are empowered through raising awareness about the issues that they face, and also disseminating local indigenous knowledge to have confidence in their own response, in their local response to their social and climate calamities that they face in their own communities. So it's very much about practicing in a way that empowers the communities to find their own solutions, because they do have the indigenous knowledge of the environment that they live in, rather than a foreigner, somebody from abroad coming to tell them how they should live, because they don't need that. They're well aware of how to manage the environment extreme environments that they face. So the other thing that we found was that the harsh summers that the villagers are facing, that there's drought for longer. So there's so basically hasn't been any rain for 3 months sometimes, and it's affecting the growth of vegetation, vegetables. So these are some of the projects that we looked at, how to create a tool that captures the moisture from the air, because in the morning, first thing in the morning when the sun rises, there's a lot of moisture in there, and how we capture that into giving more water to the vegetables surrounding it. So we are now currently working on exploring improvised methods of responding to the groundwater. So that the Rajapur village is right in the zone that you see in the middle, where it has the highest level of percentage of tube wells having arsenic contamination. This is a map that's been published by the government. So this research explores the role that the arsenic contaminated groundwater play in the Rajapur village and the community, and also how it shapes the people's lives and how they then adapt to living in these high-risk areas and how they respond to drinking water of such highly contaminated arsenic level. And it also explores how to engage with groundwater through improvised co-design, and how we learn from the community's experience of using groundwater. So for example, we've been working with local champions. This has been through the COVID-19 time when I hadn't been able to travel to Bangladesh. So we've been working very closely with the champions in the community who hosted workshops, and they found that the knowledge, the indigenous and local knowledge of responding to this environmental crisis, of using guava tree leaves to test the toxicity in the arsenic level in the groundwater. And they improvised designs of charcoal filters to filter the tube well water before drinking it. I'm going to go through really quickly. I know I've really run out of time, so 2 minutes. I think I'm just going to flick through what we've been doing remotely from London, working with the villagers. So we've been working on a lot of network building and how making the communities resilient in keeping themselves safe. So we've hosted lots of workshops who are hosted by the community champions. So we had very little to do with it, but we've kind of communicated with these champions to have confidence to host these workshops, to teach about how to wash your hands, to raise awareness through participatory design workshops of what it means by social distancing. And yeah, so these are some of the things that children got involved in through their school closure. School is still closed in the village. And yes, things like mask making, keeping the community safe during the pandemic. Really quickly about my work in London. Most of my work is through the teaching. So my teaching, I designed the brief to set creative design agenda, which is actually informed from my work in Bangladesh in the Radipur village. And it focuses on rethinking architectural pedagogy in the design and practice as an active agent in the socio-spatial environment. So for example, I ask questions like, how can architecture enable the voices of underrepresented communities, which happens to be the Black and Asian people living in London? And how can we enable these voices through architecture to enable spatial and environmental justice? Because we found that people who lived in, for example, in Woolwich, and this is our site in Woolwich, we found that in these areas in London, the impacts of environmental crisis has disproportionately affected the low-income communities who are Black and Asian people living there, and also the COVID-19 had disproportionately killed Black and Asian people in London and the UK, and our architectural projects explore that. And it's about the students are encouraged to be on the ground, talking to the community, finding what they are facing during COVID-19. So these are some of their very initial response of the COVID-19. I'm not sure if you can hear the videos, but this is, so these are students being on the ground, exploring through mapping and this area of Peckham and what. I don't know if you can hear the sound in the video. I'm not sure, but it just gives you an idea about the different methods the students are exploring while they go through their academic year. So they're on the ground talking to their communities who are affected, most affected, and then they translate those information through various types of drawings, and then a build proposal. And I think, yeah, so the way I think there was a question about what Mannan Foundation Trust is doing in London, and I think it's about being that voice. So I have been appointed to be, I'll stop sharing now. I have to finish talking, but I've been appointed to be the one of the council's design review panel in the local council where Mannan Foundation Trust is actually registered in London. So we work, the information that we find from the local communities, we become the mediator between the local authorities and the local community. I'll stop there. I'm sorry, I think I went over my time, but yeah, that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Tumpa. Yes, some question. I think Husna madam.
Yes,
Can you please?
I would like to thank Tumpa for your wonderful presentation. We came to learn about the background of Mannan Foundation and also about your the organizations that you were working with female architects of minority ethnic, which celebrates the success of women. So I give you all the credit for that, for working for the empowerment of women. And then also your research in anthropology, effects of weather, and especially your presentation on the Rajapur village and your emotional connection with your roots. I think that is very recommendable. And then your workshop that you conducted with all the village women, especially regarding and sharing experiences regarding your the women and children and their use of construction material, use of local material, bamboos. And I think it is very recommendable that you are doing so much for the community and thinking about them so much and empowering women. And also use of and also, you know, giving out the sewing machine and making women more powerful and in decision making. So, and also the challenges and learning skill and drawing and construction method in collaboration with the local people. All these are very challenging, and also dealing with the chore, how to deal with the vegetation and the flooding. So we came to know so much about your involvement in your village, and I'm sure all of us will be encouraged to do that in our own villages too. I do have a small project in my village in Shahzadpur, so I also try to work for women empowerment there, but I am not hired, so I will go and work for them also. So I'm very much inspired with your work, and I'm sure I will also take some hints from what all you did. So it was very inspiring, and also your COVID-19 awareness to the village people and making masks and other washing hands and sanitization. So it's wonderful to see you work so much, and also in your work in London. I'm sure you are doing so good, and we wish that we will start the questionnaire session now. So thank you very much. So can I ask Rumana madam? Madam, please unmute your microphone. Rumana madam, yes, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It was Rahman for your beautiful summary and views. Yes, it's very impressive. I'm also impressed with her work, and from coming from London and doing all the researches here, it might be difficult, but it's really very impressive. So we are in short time, but I think there are some questions. Please, to Tumpa, our General Secretary from Tabassum Mahmood asked that to what extent your architectural understanding about the need of Rajapur community changed before and after? Do you understand?
Yeah, yeah. That's a very good question. Yeah, so I'll be honest, I'm probably very guilty of thinking that, oh, these poor people, I can help them. But as I got to know them more, I realized how resilient the community is, especially towards the environmental challenges. And I could do very little because they already know how to deal with extreme weather conditions. And I have so much to learn from the community. So I think that's, it's a very common mistake from people from the Western world, thinking that they can be a savior of some kind going to countries like Bangladesh. But I think the most successful work or projects can be through the community collaboration and learning from local indigenous knowledge. That's something that I've learned throughout the years. Yeah.
There is another question from her, Fame. How much impact you are expecting it can bring?
The Fame one. Okay, so the Fame collaborative started in last year, so it was September last year during the pandemic, when we ethnic minority women in the industry felt that the problems were exaggerated during the COVID-19. We felt the impact more, whether it be the unfair dismissal or unfairly treating the employees, and so since then we've got nearly 1,500 followers on our social media platform, and also we've got 45 volunteers. So I actually don't know what to do with so many volunteers, because I have so many people wanting to join us. So I think the impact, I don't know how to measure the impact, but I think it's definitely needed. Platforms like Fame is definitely something that people want to belong to. And yeah, so it's important to exist, whether us being a dialogue with the men who are of privileged white background to share the stories or our lived experience of discrimination, or whether we be just the support network for those women who are going through these discrimination. I think it's really important that these kind of platforms exist.
Sorry, I have a masjid near my home, so it's a loudspeaker also. It has there's a question from Dr. Nehrin. She's saying, thank you for the inspiring sharing. Does Fame hold any collaboration with Bangladesh-based NGO or any organization?
It hasn't so far, but since I've met so many inspirational women here, powerful women here, I'm hoping there could be something in the future, because we're very new. So yeah, I would like to hear ideas about how we could collaborate with you guys as well. WAEPA. How do you say it? Is it WAEPA? WAEPA.
WAEPA, yes.
WAEPA.
May I add something, if I am permitted or allowed by the respected chair of the session
Yes,
today?
please.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Papa. It was a great presentation and we are really inspired, and of course empowered as well, having learned so much from you. So I would just like to add, yes, you have pointed out a very nice and timely proposition that we should basically collaborate together. That's why I posed the question, because going back to the previous one that Tabassum was asking, the impact measurement, actually the stories that people have to share who have been impacted by you, those need to be brought out. And I'm sure being there, it's going to be hard for you to actually connect to them in all different adversities or anything you might say, but from an entrepreneurial perspective or architecture perspective, or anyhow you call it an empowerment, I think these stories should be brought after us and in front of us, and that would actually tell you how you are impacting so many different lives. And that would tell you that how you can measure all the impacts, because there will be quantitative scales as well. Once these stories are shared, how many people are being benefited, and how many, different innovative techniques are being developed, maybe initiated by you. Those probably you might not even know about, but yes, we can bring those out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mehreen. We have another question from Mehreen Hussain, architect Mehreen Hussain. She said, asking, brick structures are becoming more popular in rural areas nowadays, causing loss of indigenous knowledge and more sustainable methods of construction. What is your observation or reflection on that? Am I clear?
You're saying that basically engineered fired bricks are something that's taking over the construction industry in Bangladesh. Is that the question?
Yeah. It's brick structures are becoming more popular in rural areas nowadays. Brick structures are now popular. They popular nowadays, and she's telling they're causing loss of indigenous knowledge and more sustainable methods of construction. What is your observation about that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So just to give you a context of our Rajapur village, so within the village boundary, on two sides, on east and west, there are two brick factories. So I wonder, obviously the demand is so much that even in that remote part of Bangladesh, they're spilling out into remote villages to keep up the demand of engineered bricks. And it is the aspiration of the local people that they see that it's a sign of wealth to use fired bricks, it's a sign of prosperity, it's a sign of achievement. So for some reason they feel that using things like bamboo, materials like bamboo or earth, or in my grandfather's original house, which is still there, has this timber structure with woven bamboo sheets. So that is seen as something that isn't of worth that much, because it's seen as something that hasn't moved into the future. It's kind of the past. So I think it's about giving confidence in the local knowledge, because that is such a beautifully designed and built house that keeps cool. It has lots of perforation at the top, and it's built very lightly, and it's lasted, I think, 100 years. So it's giving confidence to the local people to say, just because it's fired bricks, it doesn't mean, the argument I hear from the villagers is that, because it's such a harsh environment, we have to use fire bricks so it will last longer. But that's not necessarily true. My grandfather's house is made out of timber and, wood, local wood, and it's still standing, and it's 100 years old. So I think it's something that's really difficult to shift that mentality. And I don't want to be the one going to Rajapur village and telling people, how they should live. It's not my job to do that. But through that building, the Rajapur Center, what we try to do is to give an example of a public building that people are proud of, and they go in and they see actually it does work, and it didn't cost that much to build, and we have the local skills to build it. So yeah, but I'm not saying that I've changed the mentality of many, because there are people who'd love to have us build that community center with concrete, because they see concrete as the robust material, but it's not true. And it's just giving the right information. And I think it will come with, I think things will go back to how they were slowly, but it will take time, because people have aspirations to live like urban communities to live like how people are living in Dhaka or, you know, in the cities, and they think that is progress. Yeah, I think it's giving confidence in local knowledge it's the way forward.
Okay, thank you, Tumpa. We have many questions also, lots of questions here. Humaira from America, USA, she's telling that wonderful presentation and thank you for getting involved with the grassroots movements. She has a question also. Can you talk about the most difficult obstacle you had to face society while you working in the Rajaput? I think she's asking, did you face anything?
Oh yes, there were many, but you know, it's because of I wasn't used to going to a village and living in a village. I've gone from living in London, and I went and lived there for a month at the beginning, and then every year I went back and I lived there for a month. So I got better and getting used to the environment, the society. But I think one of the things that sticks in my mind is the fact that the village elders, who are so lovely, just really nice men, and they're really supportive of the community building, but they didn't want to know the building to be a women's center. They wanted the building that's for both men and women, which is fine because our healthcare service is for both men and women. So for many years, we had to hide the fact that it's actually going to benefit hugely the women. Whereas when we spoke to the women and we said, oh, you know, men and women, the men also want the share of this building, they would voice their opinion and say, but they have the tea stalls. They have all these public spaces that we are not allowed to go to. So, you know, so I think that was the challenging thing. And the other challenging thing, I had questions like from the village elders, you know, you've come from London, you studied architecture from London, and now you're telling us we should be building with mud, you know, where you don't build with mud in London. So it's that, you know, building that dialogue to basically communicate that mud is really good for that environment. Mud isn't so good in other environments, maybe, but in that village, it would work really well. But it's, yeah, so those are some of the challenges, which actually, if you spoke to the people, the low income communities who did use mud, would have the knowledge to tell you actually mud is excellent for this environment. So it's also the class difference as well. So the village elders were really wealthy, they had a lot of money, so they had houses which looked like something that you'd see in Dhaka. And so, yeah, so those are the differences in people's ideas of what is right for the village that I kind of had to juggle with.
I think it's a conservative society. Also, the elder women don't want the younger to go somewhere. So another question. There is another question from Jana Farukali, our Shama madam. She's telling very inspiring work. Is there any work on Manna Foundation in the UK? And she has another question. FAME is doing what WAEPA is doing here. Very much needed. Why was the prototype building built on water? So I think I repeat again. Is there any work on Mannan Foundation in the UK? The first question was.
Yeah. So okay, so first of all, when you say work, do you mean a building? Because there isn't a building by Mannan Foundation Trust, but there are other services, architectural services. So for example, I work with the local authorities because Mannan Foundation Trust is a charity that's based in that local authority in London, to be the mediator between communities and the local authority. So that's more advisory work in London. And the other question was about why was it, oh, FAME, what FAME is doing. Yeah, I mean, obviously we're not as, we haven't been around as long as WAEPA, but yeah, it sounds quite similar. Our aspirations are quite similar. So yeah, it but we're very new, obviously, and it is about empowering women in the industry as well. So we share that ethos. And the third question is, why was it built on water? It wasn't built on water. So it's on a ditch. The site is on a ditch. So during the drought, sorry, it wasn't very clear I was rushing in the presentation, but during the heat of the summer, it's dried, and then in the rainy season, it collects water. So what I was trying to explain was that we wanted to keep that ecology of a ditch, because what a ditch does is that it attracts microorganism, it attracts fish, it attracts birds in the rainy season, and we didn't want to lose that by filling it. It would completely interrupt the local ecology if we filled the ditch with soil. It needed to have that continuation of the way it behaved, the way the ground behaved. That's why I wanted to minimize the intervention on the ground by raising the building above the ditch.
Okay. There are some comments also we have got from Dr. Salma Akhtar. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. Lisa also says, thank you so much for sharing your inspiring journey. Best wishes, Tumpa. Great to see all the inspiring ladies in this morning. And our Janab Faruqi Ali Madam says, thanks for the answers. Good luck in future endeavors. So any other question from the forum, please? We are.
I would like to invite Humaira Zaman, because I have seen her in a photograph which showed Tumpa. So can you say something about it?
Thank you. I went visiting. Actually, she had a presentation in the Bengal Institute. So I was fortunate to see that, where she was talking about her struggles. It was, that presentation had more about how she went and worked with the project. So that, for me, I think, I need to take my students to see all these efforts and how local materials are being used, and someone from trained from the West, staying in West, coming and connecting and working in our rural place, trying to do something. I think it's a very big thing, and especially because my students, they come mostly from the other parts of Bangladesh, not from Dhaka proper. So I wanted them to see how they could connect, they could do something for their own place. You have to go back to the roots. That is what was my intention. So we took a small, difficult trip, you may say. She had suggested a very good trip that I could just take the bus straight to the Rajapur, but we wanted to take the night launch, chilly night. But the experience of being there was very interesting. And I would like to ask Tumpa about something like Mannan family. If I talk about her ancestors or her forefathers, they have a big influence in that village. Maybe right now they are a little bit away from it, but their family has a big influence. And that did help her to go about with the project. But even in spite of that, this beautiful building can't be seen from the road because they had to put up a wall to protect. Like, even when you engage the community, you cannot engage the whole community. It is always, whom are you empowering? Yes, they are empowering the woman. Her focus was women. Maybe that was not taken very nicely. So the beautiful architecture that at first when we went to the site, we were looking, where is it? Then we could see the wall. It hid the beautiful structure. But if you go inside, you get to see the space, and I love the detailing that was done with the bamboo and the mud structure. It was very interesting to see. Of course, many of my students were very excited to see the different kind of
bamboo structure being used there. You know, it's the same old bamboo that is used in the rural Bangladesh, but the detailings were done so differently. So it had a very different impact. And I wish she showed some of the details too. You would all would have enjoyed it. It was a lovely trip, and I would ask you all to take a trip too.
Thank you, Humara. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You can engage, but you may not be able to reach out to everyone in the community. And so when we left after we finished, we handed over to some of the community members to run the projects. And that was the decision made, that we have to build a wall around it to protect this building. You know, so that's how they felt that it needed protection. Which is a shame.
Yeah, like you see, we have these walled plot or walled areas in urban spaces. When we start, the rural houses don't have walls. You know, one court flows into another, but you had to put that wall to protect that building. So that was very sad. Yes, I understand why you had to do it, but
I had nothing to do with it.
no, of course you had nothing to do with it, but you
No, it is so sad. It's very sad. I agree with you. Because I think...
Thank you, Selina Appa, for letting me talk on that project, because yeah, it is something that I felt very good visiting that, and I did knock her after that, you know, it was a wonderful experience for me.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much, Humaira. Today is World Environment Day, and we have seen Tumpa's village, green, watery, green lashes, and so in one sense, that today your presentation is very appropriate for today, because today is World Environment Day. So we need actually our real environment. We have to back, because of this virus, coronavirus, and the world is becoming very actually the polluted environment. Because of this polluted environment, this type of virus and the other disease prevailing. So that's why we need more green, more plantation, more sustainable environment. So a glimpse of your presentation give us that eye-soothing green environment. This really, I am thankful to Tumpa that you made it, because I was very anxious and curious that what you will present us as your presentation, because you are very stick to your previous topic, which you send us. And I would try to motivate you to make it short and focus it on environment. So you made it. Thank you very much for that. And actually, I was very curious about FAME, 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 Female Architects of Minority. What does it mean? Actually, I'm not clear to it, because in London or UK, you are working for them who are minority in the society, right? Or what it is? Could you please make it detail or clear to it? What actually you are doing for them, or who are they?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, so basically we are an organization that gives support to women who are either from Black or Asian background in the UK or around the world, but majority of our followers are in the UK, and our projects are research-based projects. So we are currently hosting a number of public events where we are encouraging people to share their lived experience of discrimination. So the research is currently supported by the RIBA because there is an urgent need to understand how people's race and their gender affects their experience of working in architecture. So that's how we started it. But then it's growing really quickly, and we are also now providing services like a job center. So we become a platform where some offices only have white people working for them, so they are keen for diversity. So they would come to us to advertise jobs in their offices, so we could then share that information, for example. So there's lots of little projects that we're trying to do. We're also working with other local charities who are very much interested in improving urban spaces for women, safe spaces for women in cities of the UK, because you would be surprised to know, although UK is supposed to be progressive, but is actually not that safe at night for a woman to be walking on her own, for example. And there are areas in the UK, or in London especially, where even during the day you wouldn't walk on your own. So, so there are some charities who are looking through design how these spaces can be changed, and they have approached us to work with them in these projects. So yeah, so there's lots of little, if you like, little projects that we're working on. Our main.
Do you have support from local authority? Do you have any support from local authority, or any funding, or any financial aid, or any legislation, or anything? Are you getting that?
We for the research project, it's being funded by the RIBA.
I see.
Yeah, so the RIBA had taken an interest in our research, and they said they would support us, and they're funding some of it. No, we don't have a direct relationship with any local authorities, but we are in dialogues with local authorities like Southwark Council, that I'm currently an advisor of. So yeah, I mean, there are lots of issues, even in local authorities, where they employ architects, but recently it's been highlighted that they've employed in an area where 70 to 80% of the population are Black and Asian, but the architects are all white. So that's the problem, because how can you represent a community if you are not from that community? So yeah, so there are issues, things like that the local authorities are addressing, and we're in dialogue with them about, we're challenging them basically, yeah, challenging their decisions of not being diverse institutions.
Thank you, Tumpa. We, WAEPA, we are very much inspired by your work, because you're very young and you're still thinking about that. We have to do something for the community. We have to do something for our female architects. So WAEPA is also trying to do something for our professionals, women architects, engineers, planners, who are graduated from Bangladesh. So we are trying to do something for them, to inspire them to do in spite of their professional work, they have some responsibility for the community. So we are trying to raise awareness among them. We try to motivate them to do extra work in addition to professional work. So we are, I think this presentation will help our young professionals who are thinking about their themselves, only themselves, and only doing their just as a official, they're doing their job, not as a professional. So we think that it's a great lesson from you and inspiration for them who are just doing just to do work, official work, not as a professional or as a responsible citizen or responsible responsive to the community. They have to do some work. That's the commitment for today's situation, because we are very worst situation in Bangladesh, or like other all over the world, the same situation because of pandemic, corona pandemic. So we have to overcome this, and we have to prepare ourselves for the new normal life. So how to do that? I think this Black Lives Matter, you are inspired from them. You just founded this film, right? So we think.
We have a last question here.
Yeah.
Did I interrupt? Do you have any branches of FAME in the USA?
No, but we would love to welcome female architects, Bangladeshi architects or Asian or Black architects to join us and expand. We don't currently. We have some architects from India actually. So I'd be very keen to have some Bangladeshi female architects join us as well, because we managed to reach to India, but I would like to reach out to Bangladesh because it makes.
Excuse me.
Because you take WAEPA.
I am interested.
You actually make affiliation with WAEPA.
Yeah.
FAME can be an affiliated body.
Yeah, sounds good.
So we can join with you, and it will be a very strong platform if we join with FAME.
Yeah,
you think that?
Yeah, that sounds interesting. So I can keep you in the loop of what plans we've got for the next event that we are setting up. So yeah, that would be really interesting to have you guys join us.
One question, yeah.
Lisa is again asking.
The other question is coming. What is the process to bring them over and them? Is another question, right? So could you?
The question is, if somebody wants to join FAME, what is the process?
Okay, so our main platform to reach out to people is Instagram. I don't know if you guys use Instagram. Do you?
Yeah, we have Instagram.
Yeah, so that's our main platform, but then I can put on the chat the email address, and then we connect people through email. So, sorry, let me just find the email address. Please carry on talking while I find the email address.
Someone wants to say something also.
Madam,
you wanted to say something?
I wanted to say that I am interested because I am about to start a project, and I have a land over there in my village, a small area where I wish to do something similar, but I didn't have much encouragement or courage to do it. But seeing you gave me a lot of inspiration, and I think I will get in touch with you so that I get some more ideas or how to add FAME into this project. but
Yes,
I
I'll
will do it.
please do get in touch with me. I'd love to
I would.
more about
So
your
I'll
project.
write down your email address. So thank you very much for your inspiration.
Thank you.
Now nearly 9. So Lubana, can you conclude
Yeah, thank you very
this
much.
session?
Well, we love to continue with you more, but time is not dealing with us. So thank you very much. It was very interesting and very encouraging for all of us that someday, if not now, but someday we can do something for our own villages or own space. Also, as well as for cities, because I think, to me, community is very important to go before going to architecture design. So it's not only for villages, but also I think it's for our city and our town. Also, we need this type of researches and things to do. So so we are at the end now. It's almost 9 o'clock. I think we can end for today's, but hope to see you again with more interesting projects with you. And love to tell you that I have a 14-year-old daughter who did watch your full presentation from sitting beside me. She was very interested to see that. Yeah, so
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your lovely presentation. And that's I conclude our session today. Thank you very much to everyone for participating in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Very wonderful to
Good
meet
night.
you all.